says simply, "We will remember." That banner was put up 9 years ago to commemorate the first anniversary of the 9/11 attacks. And now it's up there for the second time. It doesn't seem like 10 years have gone by. I know one family who very fortunately had one of their sons who was due to have an interview on one of the floors above where the first plane crashed in the World Trade Center. And he arrived early only to be told that his interview room had been changed to one of the smaller office buildings across the street. And he got out of the building just as the plane hit. An incredible story. But many were not that fortunate, as you know. And I know of another family, a local family here in San Diego. And their son died in the attack. And it's something that none of us should ever forget. And I was reminded sometime after that, when there was an exhibit at the Smithsonian Institute with hundreds of photographs of the attack on 9/11 on a trip that I had to Washington, D.C. And I'll never forget walking into that exhibit, and the very first picture was the picture of this young man from San Diego who had lost his life. We can only feel the grief and sadness and share that sorrow that his family feels. That took my breath away, and it stopped me solidly in my tracks. I had been in Washington, D.C. on that day in September 10 years ago. Supervisor Greg Cox and I were there on business, and we were scheduled to have meetings in the Senate and later in the day at the White House. It became clear early that morning that none of the meetings was going to take place. I'll remember how the people came together and what we saw. There was a strange quiet that fell over Washington, and people were shoulder to shoulder on the sidewalks, almost as close as the color guard that was here just a few minutes ago. And they were simply walking in a direction to get out of town. And there was major gridlocks on the street. Now, we were in a hotel at the entrance to the Georgetown community, and there was no place we were going to be able to go. And we were watching what was happening around us with all the uncertainty that was there, because the local news was reporting that there were bombs going off all over Washington, D.C. And while they reported that there was a blast at the Pentagon, that was probably the only accurate part of the reports that we were getting. And we were incredibly nervous and tense. I was particularly nervous because one of my daughters was also there at the same time, and I couldn't connect with her. And I knew she was supposed to be on the mall where they were reporting all these bombs were going off. And it was a matter of a few hours before we were able to make contact with one another. And you can imagine how a father would feel knowing that one of your kids was there and you just didn't know where she was. And I came to find out later that what she had done, and I was very proud of her, because she's an emergency room doctor. And her first thought was, with all of these casualties that are being reported, I better get to the closest hospital. And she went to the George Washington University Hospital to see if she could help. And of course, there wasn't the casualties. She ended up giving blood, and then started worrying about, maybe Dad wants to know where I am. Well, these are the things that you'll never forget. There's another thing I want to share with you that is a feeling that I had, and more intently than I think any other time in my life, and that was the feeling of being an American. You felt like this just erased all of those little petty things that we put between one another. Forget about the partisan stuff. I mean, even the most petty things. And you felt a kinship with everybody And everybody, it struck me as the people were just so polite in trying to get out of Washington. There was no pushing, there was no shoving. Everyone was supporting one another. And there was a sense that we were all in this together. We're here today at an event organized by the World Trade Center. So it's appropriate to note that along with our fellow Americans that were killed, that there were hundreds of foreign nationals who were also killed in the destruction of those two towers. And the entire world joined us in our grief and in our pain. It's my honor to support the World Trade Center of San Diego. This is an organization that is dedicated to reaching out to the world and building those relationships that benefit us and benefit this country. I'd like to share a quote from Catherine Peterson, who is a famous American author of children's books, who was born in China to missionary parents. And Catherine wrote, "Peace is not won by those who fiercely guard their differences, but by those who with open minds and hearts seek out connections." The terrorists wanted to isolate us from the world. They wanted us to withdraw from our involvement and our obligations. They failed, and that is something else that I will always remember. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor